If you have added an Excel file to Google Drive or have converted an Excel file into a Google Sheets document, the macros in the Excel file will not work. The question for us then in this project is, do we wish to spend the time developing macros for Google Sheets, or do we spend the time working on workarounds that will do the same job as the macros would? This video deals primarily with some of the workarounds that will do the same job as macros would in Google Sheets. In order to test the hypothesis that since the OCR process we're using always converts to Excel files, that might be the problem. So I created a spreadsheet, if you will, representing a hypothetical page directly from Google Sheets with no intervention whatsoever with Excel. Let's take a look at this worksheet of completely hypothetical information. First thing we notice is that some of these records are out of place. Information, pieces of information are in the wrong column. For example, in column 6 and in column 10, that is very obvious. Let's see if we can replace these first before we get serious about looking at workarounds. Let's select these, cut them from their current location, and paste them into where they should be. We find that the cause of this problem was that these are combined in the same column. Let's separate those. We'll cut it and paste it in here. I'm using Control X to cut and Control V to paste. Another record with a problem with information in the wrong column is number 10. This information here should all be moved one column to the right. Let's see if we can do that. First of all, we'll select, Control X to cut, Control V to paste. And we have the information in the proper columns now. And we need to move the given name from here, select it, Control X to cut it, Control V to paste. And I believe now at least we have all of the information in the correct columns, but there are still problems, and quite a number of them. We see here under Post Office, for example, that there are leading, medial, and trailing spaces. This one has several leading spaces that need to be taken out. This one has at least one leading space and some medial spaces. A couple of leading spaces here and some medial spaces here. So we need to trim the data in this column. If you're trimming one column, we can select the column, go to Data, Data Cleanup, and Trim White Space. And that trimmed the white space, the extra white space, from 7 records in that column. Let's go back for a moment. I'll use Control Z to reverse that process. It is possible to trim data in multiple columns as well if the columns are selected. Let's select column A, hold down the Shift key and select column F, and that selects those 2 columns and everything in between. With all the columns selected, we can again go to Data, Data Cleanup, Trim White Spaces. 11 cells were fixed in that case, and we can see it has indeed corrected the white spaces in column F and in the other columns where it was existing as well. Let's start working from right to left. In column F for Post Office, we need to extract the first couple of characters from each cell. To do that, we need a column to work in. Let's select, right-click, and insert one column to the left. Now in this column, we can extract the first 2 characters. Let's see how we do that. We're going to use a formula sometimes called a function here, the left function. Equals left the column we're talking about, or the cell we're talking about, which is G1, and how many characters do we want to extract. Since we have trimmed this column, we know there's no leading spaces to mess up this operation, so we should be able to get by with saying 2. And we did. Now we want to take these characters ultimately and convert them to something else. However, we have a small problem. These here are only produced by the function that appears up here. We still do not have the values themselves as independent entities. Although we have produced the first 2 characters in each cell in column G, we still do not have these standing alone as values or characters without their formula. So what we have to do is we have to select these. Notice the broken line. Let's insert one column. Let's go back here, make sure we have these copied. Come over here and paste special, values only. And we've pasted these, but only the values. The columns look identical to the I, but they're not. This is only produced by the formula. And if the formula changes or something changes, that value will change. These are now set as values. We don't need the formulas anymore because we have extracted the values from that. We'll go here and we will delete the column. Now we want to modify this column. PO we really don't need. All right, we're going to select the column so that only what we do only happens in this column. We're going to go to Edit, Find and Replace. We want to find each instance of F period, lowercase, so we'll match the case. We want to convert that to this expression. Replace all, done. And there we've converted all of the F periods to freeholder on, which is a type of land holding back in the 1800s. We also want to do the same to H period though, so let's go back to Edit, Find and Replace, H period, again matching the case, and we want to change that to householder on. Replace all, and done. And now we've converted those letters that we extracted into an expression we will use later. Now, are these actual expressions? Yes, they are. They're not formulas, so we can leave them and we can work with them. Now we want to remove the F and the H from this column. We can again use Find and Replace. Find and Replace. We're going to look in that column for all of the F periods. We'll match the case, so we get the lowercase f's only. We'll make sure that there's nothing in this, and we want to replace F period with nothing. Now, we're going to trim this column in a minute. If we wanted to trim it as we go, we could put F period space, and that would take out that space that comes after the period in each case. And let's try the same with H. H period, match the case, replace with nothing, and done. Now, we have removed the F and the H, but we have a leading space in each case. We could leave that column selected for a moment, go to Data, Data Cleanup, and Trim White Space. And it trimmed it from 10, it did, trimmed it from every one, and that column, in fact, is good to go to this point. Now, we don't want to leave it here because we want to specify that what this refers to in each case is in fact the post office that people would go to. In other words, where would Fiona collect her mail? She'd collect her mail at the post office in Foxborough. Let's see how we would do that. To do that, we're going to insert a column here, and we're going to work with these terms. We're going to come here and we're going to put in a function. The concatenate or join function. We're going to join H1. We're going to need to add a space, which has to be put in quotes. And then we're going to put in a term, which also, because it's text, has to be in quotes. Now, this looks good. Frankfurt Post Office, Bangor Post Office, Rendersville Post Office. However, if we look up here, we see that, oh, we're still working with just the formulas. So we're going to select this column, copy it, and we're going to paste it over here. So we're going to select, right-click, paste special, values only, and let's move our horizontal scroll bar over just a bit so we can see what we're doing. And we have these. They're the same as this, like a mirror image, except they are different, as we know already. Here, we just have the formula. Here, we have the actual characters. This column here is what we want to keep, and this can be deleted. It's done its job. Up here, we now will use the capitalized post office, and that will be our column. Now let's come back and work on the other columns. We'll be creating out of these in here a residence statement. Right here, I'm going to take the bolding off this one. There's no real reason that should be bolded. Come on. There we go. Let's take the bolding off. There we go. We want to add these. Before we do, though, there's a couple of modifications we should make. We have the information in the correct column. We'll trim that in a minute. But if we have under the concession column, if we look here, we do have some problems here. We have, for example, the OCR process has created EON instead of CON here. In a couple of cases, we don't have a period after the expression we need, so let's change that. Let's select just this column, so only what we say here only happens in this column. We'll do a find and replace. We're going to look for EON, and we're going to replace it with EON period. No, we're not. Sorry about that. It was CON period. Replace all. What do we have? 2. Let's see if we got them. Okay, good, good. Now we did end up with a double period here, which we actually don't want. Although we're going to see more of those in just a second. Let's select this column again. Now we have a second problem here. Yes, we do. There's some of these that do not have a period. They're all CON, but 2 of them don't have a period. There's a couple of ways around this. One is to create a situation where they all have a single period, which we could do, or to simply do the conversion we're going to use twice. Let's try both ways and see how it works. So we've selected this. We're going to go to Edit, Find and Replace. We're going to look for CON, because now all are CON. There's no EON left. Match the case, and we're going to do for CON period. We're going to do all. It should do 10, and it did. So what it's done here now is it's added a period to the ones that didn't have one, but it's also added a period to the ones that did. Well, to get rid of those double periods, we'll find it again. And we look just for double periods. And we replace them with single periods. Replace all. Let's see, 8 maybe? Yes, 8 it is. And now all have a single period. Just a word of information here. You can replace 2 periods with 1, but if you put 3 periods, the program will interpret it as an ellipsis and will not do it. All right, we have CON period in all the cases here. We want to do a find and replace one more time. We want to find CON period and replace it with, and let's make sure we match our case, with concession. Should be all 10. It is. And although the space is a little crowded there, we see that we have the word concession. So we now know that these folks over here all live on a particular concession. The part of lot 10 looks good, but since we're going to work with this column, and this column, we might well want to make sure they're trimmed before we start. So we have a basis for that. So let's go, we'll select the first column, hold down the Shift key and select the last of the 3 columns. We're going to go to Data, Data Cleanup, Trim White Space. It says it didn't find any, but that's quite reasonable. There might not have been any there, but at least we know now that there's no leading, trailing, or medial extra white spaces in these 3 columns, and we can work with them with a formula. What we want to do is to create a new term that incorporates all of these. It's going to be quite a long term, and it's going to be our residence term. Let's see how we do that. We're going to use the concatenate feature again. First we want from column G, so G1. We're going to need a space, double quote, space, double quote, comma. We want E1, comma. Between concession and lot, we want a hyphen. So we're going to put the hyphen in quotes. And then we're going to do F1. Now, is that going to work for us? It appears it did. But it's a big expression. There we are. So what we've done here is we want to change this ultimately to residence. These look okay here. But once again, they're just formulas. So what we need to do here is insert a column here. Select these again to make sure we have them selected. Copy them. Click here and right-click, paste special values. Again, these columns look the same, but they're not. These are the actual values, the words we want. These are just the formulas that create those words or expressions. We'll select here and we will delete that column. While we're at it, we might as well see if we can unbold that. There we go. And this is not going to be lot and concession anymore. This is going to be residence. And that one we will bold. So we've got now surname, given name, occupation, residence, concession, lot. We don't need concession, lot, and this regarding the land holding. So we can take those out. Delete the column, and delete the column. And now the information we have becomes a little more manageable. We've got surname, given name, occupation, residence, post office. The one thing we need here is municipality before post office. So we'll click in here insert one column to the left, and we'll put in municipality. Well, what municipality shall it be? This will be the township of Lime Lake. And there we have cleaned up our information. The only thing we haven't done is to convert the surnames to capitals. To do that, we'll use a formula or a function. And as you can see, Google Sheets anticipated what I'd be doing. Now, what do we have here? We have the formulas. We don't have the actual words. So we need to copy those and put them back over the other way. Columns look the same other than the bolding, but here we have the values, here we have the formulas can go. The only thing we have here that I would change in what I was doing is this. Fiona, a good Scottish name. I tend to make the MC with an uppercase M and a lowercase c. Words like McDonald, McAfee, McInnes, and so on. So let's go to Edit, Find and Replace one more time. Only use this column. And we want to be sure to match the case in this case. We want to look for MC in caps and replace that with uppercase M, lowercase c. We're only searching this column. Replace. Replaced one instance, that's correct, and that was Fiona's surname. We're done. And I would say at this point, we are done with this sample. I'm going to change the name slightly so that when it saves itself, hopefully we will have access to our original. I do apologize for not finding or further exploring how to use macros in Google Sheets. I think honestly using in particular the Find and Replace feature under Edit, we can find a workaround for almost anything we need with this project.